Nerdcast assemble!
Stay dandy, baby. In the latest episode of The Mandalorian, Mando has an intense battle with a group of bandits, barely dodges some really crafty X-Wing pilots, and goes toe-to-toe with a massive ice spider army. And even with all of that, it doesn't compare to the best thing that comes in this episode. Yes, I'm talking about none other than Dr. Mandible, the giant animatronic ant puppet. Big surprise for this episode of The Mandalorian, it was directed by Peyton Reed, who just so happened to work on Ant-Man and Ant-Man and the Wasp. And I guess he just couldn't help himself. He just had to include some sort of ridiculous and goofy Easter egg to the films that he's worked on in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, so he decided to not be subtle about it at all and just inject this giant, amazing robot ant puppet, which barely moves at all, but really, it's just so charming, I cannot help but want to talk about it. Dr. Mandible for president. But there's a lot of details to go over, so strap on your jetpack, let's go flying. It's Mandalorian time, Season 2, Episode 2, The Passenger. One of my favorite things about The Mandalorian is the fact that they never really do big previews or trailers for the individual episodes, and if they do them, well, I avoid them like the plague. I love going to an episode not knowing what's actually going to happen, especially when I haven't seen a lot of the press material. It allows the creativity to really explode off the screen, not to mention the introduction of a lot of really great and enduring characters, and also, of course, the thing we all came for, that sweet, sweet Mando action. And this episode is absolutely packed with it, with some brilliant moments, some great character design, and basically just an overall fun episode, which is actually the beginning of a two-parter, which I think is immediately interesting. As I recall from the last season, while there was an overarching story, there were only so many episodes which actually sort of connected with one another, so this immediately makes it a little more interesting and shows that this time, this adventure with Mando is definitely going to go a little longer. And it's made pretty apparent by this episode where basically the entire plot is all about him being stranded on an ice planet covered in giant monsters that want to destroy him and his precious cargo, which just so happens to be a frog lady voiced by D. Bradley Baker of all people, who needs to be transported to another planet so that her eggs can be fertilized. Not only that, but this frog lady's frog husband also has some pretty important information about the location of some Mandalorians, and basically that's what Mando is all about. And Mando is all about kicking ass, and that's exactly what he does in this episode. This was an episode which really showed that not only is the character incredibly resourceful, but you never want to get in a fight with this guy, because he's either just going to outright kill you, or he's going to make you look like a fool. I would dare say that the opening of this episode is just as good as any of the big action set pieces that actually take place towards the end. This great scene where all these bandits are actually trying to steal Baby Yoda away from Mando, and they actually do this in a really clever way by setting up this rope trap underneath the sand, pulling it right as he flies over it with his speeder bike, which sends him flying. And a really great acrobatic scene of him really cleverly using his jetpack, which I hope to see a lot more of in this season. But basically, he just ends up just beating the crap and killing these guys in some really creative ways, like this one point where he actually takes this one guy's gun, pulls it towards him with a grappling hook, where it ends up smacking into the heads of two of the goons who are trying to take him out. But the best scene is with the little guy. Oh, the little guy gets it bad. To my knowledge, I didn't realize that Mandalorians could actually sort of control their jetpacks, like with the weird wrist gauntlets that they have. But that's exactly what he does to trick this alien who basically tries to take away his jetpack in exchange for Baby Yoda, who's being used as a poor hostage. If only that little alien knew that he was actually holding a destructive Akira baby. So as this little guy's running off with Mando's backpack, he suddenly turns it on his wrist gauntlet and just sends this guy flying up into the sky, when suddenly you hear him darting around, and then suddenly he just falls to the earth and dies. It's a great opening scene of the episode, again establishing that Mandalorian, the Mandalorian, is a character who exists sort of like in the gray of the Star Wars universe. He's not exactly a hero, not a good guy, not a bad guy, somewhere in between, and that's again what makes him really unpredictable and remarkably interesting. But the bulk of this episode is devoted to the Mandalorian and the Frog Lady. Mando needs information about the Mandalorians, and apparently it's a really difficult thing to do, so he ends up going to Tatooine, Mos Eisley in particular, to the classic bar of our memories in yesteryear, and that's when he meets Amy Sedaris' character, who is talking with a giant, ridiculous ant. In any other franchise, if I saw this effect, I would think it was bad. It would totally take me out of the experience. And something Star Wars related, there's something amazingly charming all about it. Maybe it just takes me back to being a kid watching the original Star Wars with all the goofy aliens and costumes, which of course are not really moving all that much. There's not many animatronics implemented in them. A lot of them have those stoic, dead-looking faces. But I don't know. There's just always been something kind of awesome about that in Star Wars, where the effects are puppets and animatronics, and they feel real, and they're right there in the set. And if that were a big CGI ant, it would just look so stupid. I don't know what it is about it being just a ridiculous-looking puppet, but man, I love it. I'm serious, the thing doesn't even move. Like, its mandibles move a little bit, like one of the arms kind of swivels a little bit, and its head turns. It's so simple. We're literally going back to 1970s special effects, and it makes it feel more Star Wars. And besides, if you wanted your friggin' CGI load, you're gonna get it all over the big final scene of the episode with a massive spider. Anywho, I'm getting off track talking about frickin' Dr. Mandible over here. Let's get back to the main story here. So, basically, Mando meets with Amy Sedaris' character, who says, hey, this woman's husband knows where you can learn about the Mandalorians and possibly where you can find them. So, he decides to take her across space, but they can't travel in hyperspace because she has to carefully carry her eggs, and apparently that would be really bad for them. So, no hyperspace basically means this is going to be a very long trip. Not to mention, it's gonna run the risk of running into the New Republic, which of course does end up happening in this episode. 2 X-Wing pilots. One of which we've already seen before, who apparently his name is Trapper Wolf. That's fucking cool. And there's another new character who goes by the name of Carson Teva, who's kind of like the older, more wiser member of the team. He's like Peppy from Star Fox. They basically pull Mando over, which is really funny. I mean, we've never really seen anything like this in any of the films or anything, of watching the New Republic, you know, like, do their thing. So this is kind of interesting how they're basically cops. The scene to me was really funny. Almost as funny as a giant animatronic ant. But just the concept of watching a character in the Star Wars universe basically get pulled over by the space police is really funny. And that's basically what these X-Wing pilots are. They basically pull over Mandalorian, they want to run his numbers, get his information, and when he can't provide them with everything that they want, basically a massive chase scene ensues, which is basically code word for Star Wars porn. Watch all of the spaceships fly over the place and look really awesome while they do it. They end up arriving on some ice planet where Mando manages to outmaneuver them, basically dodging himself into a cave. By the way, this sequence just looks freaking amazing. Gotta give props to all the teams that work on this show, whether it's the animatronics or the CGI. Everything manages to look pretty freaking good the entire time. So, right as it looks like they're finally about to escape, Mando and the Frog Lady and the entire ship, the Razor Crest, just crashes into this underground cavern where not only the ship has been heavily damaged, but they're also in the middle of a giant ice spider nest. Initially in the episode, the communication between Mando and the Frog Lady is interesting because while Mando has shown that he can speak a number of different languages and sign language, he cannot talk in this woman's language. It's basically just D. Bradley Baker doing lots of weird frog sound effects. And this leads to a huge disconnect to them initially. That is until after the big crash, where she actually manages to take the Q9 droid from the last season and uses it to translate her speak to Mando, which is basically saying she's incredibly desperate to get to this planet. She wants to see her husband, and she wants to see her babies. And then things just suddenly get weirder, where the Frog Lady decides to take refuge in an even deeper underground cavern which has a frigging hot spring, which for a frog on a giant ice planet is probably the best place they could possibly be. However, it just so happens to be smack dab in the middle of a massive nest of disturbing looking spiders, which are all suddenly awoken thanks to Baby Yoda, you little shit. Basically, Baby Yoda does what he does best, which is eat everything in friggin' sight, and he decides to open up this egg and starts to devour it, which wakes up everybody, including the Big Mama Spider, who is absolutely massive and where most of the budget of this episode actually went into. This is a really cool-looking Star Wars alien that's very scary, and it ends up chasing the Mando and the Frog Lady all over this place before they make their way and barricade themselves in the Razor's Crest. This scene is really solid. Mostly it's just fun to watch Mando shoot a lot of spiders, but it has this sort of like zombie-like feel where they're constantly being attacked by these large numbers of creatures and constantly having to close doors, use the flamethrower, blast them all multiple times. Hell, even Frog Lady's a good shot. She ends up saving Baby Yoda from being killed by one of these things. But then, out of nowhere, the two X-Wing pilots decide to show up and they end up killing this thing, and that's when they also realize some of the good deeds the Mando has done, so they decide that they're not necessarily going to help him with the ship, but they're going to look the other way, and they end up leaving them. Mando not only kicks a lot of ass, but apparently he's a pretty competent mechanic, as he's able to just barely fix the ship, and it's going to allow them to make it to their destination, albeit a little slowly. They have to stay up in the cockpit. It's the only thing in the ship that can be pressurized, otherwise everything else in the back is just completely messed up. The Razor Crest is the real freaking victim of this episode. It just gets beat up the entire time. And then suddenly, the episode just ends. I'm really excited to see that this early on, we're already going to be getting a two-parter episode. I just think it makes it feel all the more epic. Yet, a lot of the genius of Mandalorian lies in its simplicity. So let's talk about that a little bit. In the rundown of this episode of The Mandalorian, I had so much fun watching this episode. It felt real classic Star Wars with the use of real suits and puppets and animatronics. I loved the contrast of the first half of the episode being set on Tatooine and the second half being on an ice planet. They really do have completely different feels to them. I really loved the scene at the beginning though with the bandits. That was just so fun and creative, especially that big jetpack scene. That really actually had me laughing quite a bit, and it was unique, and it makes me hope we're going to see a lot more crazy things he's actually going to do with remote controlling that jetpack. I think that's going to be really great. The return of Amy Sedaris, because she's just freaking crazy. She works really well against all of these characters and weird backdrops, and watching her interact with a giant animatronic ant is a lot of fun. She knows that this shit is insane, but she's having a lot of fun and absolutely chewing the scenery. Said Dr. Mandible, one of my favorite Star Wars characters of all time. I don't know what it is about these stupid puppet-like characters, but they make me laugh so much, and they're the type of characters that I will absolutely never forget. With a name like Dr. Mandible, come on. But a lot of this episode definitely lied in the heart of the Mandalorian and the Frog Lady. In fact, this episode to me was about what it means to be a parent and protective of a child. This, of course, is obvious with the Mandalorian and Baby Nuggies. Mando's relationship with Baby Yoda has changed so much over the course of the last season, and now he's incredibly more protective of him now at this point, to the point where he pretty much takes him with him wherever he goes, even if that's a giant spider-infested ice cavern. The character of the Frog Lady was just fun, if only for the outlandish and crazy design. The weird squeaky noises it made, its giant black eyes, and just the fact that it's basically just a giant bipedal frog is really freaking awesome. It's great, and it makes for, again, another great character, done with animatronics, which makes it feel way more real and like it is actually there. This episode is essentially about two parents who are trying to protect their children from the horrors of the world, and in that sense, it did kind of work, and it had some nice theming to it. The action in this episode was incredibly well done. I think Peyton Reed knows how to really compose and make some really awesome looking action scenes. You could definitely see that in the beginning with the battle against the bandits, but even that big final action scene of running away from the spider trying to get to the Razor's Crest was really thrilling and well paced. It actually did feel pretty creepy as watching all those things just take over the entire caverns, just to be followed by that massive nightmare-induced one, which is just, again, another classic super scary looking Star Wars monster. Again, the creativity of the series is great. And even the return of the X-Wing pilots, which I think is great. I love that they bring in that stuff with completely brand new characters, and it still doesn't feel like it's, like pandering too much. It is cool to see X-Wings, and getting to see them chase down the Razor Crest is nothing short of thrilling. I especially love the portrayal of the X-Wing pilots, showing how far the Republic has come, and how they're basically the exact opposite of what the actual Empire was. I mean, even throughout the entire chase scene, when they could easily shoot the Razor Crest, they decide not to. They go as far as they possibly can to try and reason with Mando, and even at the end, they end up saving him and looking in the other way. As they say, however, these are trying times, so there could be a whole nother reason for this altogether, some other things brewing in the background. And then, of course, there's Baby Yoda. We gotta talk about Baby Yoda for a second. So, I didn't like his portrayal in the last episode because I felt that he was just being shoehorned into all of these cute moments. He was basically just sort of passively there. The good thing is that in this episode, he plays a more active role, and a lot of that is owed to this one running joke throughout the course of the episode where he is completely obsessed with the Frog Lady's eggs, to the point where he tries to eat them, and he manages to do so a number of times in this episode, and it's really disturbing when you think that this is just a mother who's trying to get her children born. And then, of course, there is the best scene of the entire episode, aside from Dr. Mandible, where they're finally making their way off of the planet, and suddenly we get the scene where Baby Yoda is eyeing the weird container that holds all this frog lady's eggs, and it looks like he's getting ready to go back for one, but luckily Mando stops him at the last moment. Most of the episode is devoted to Mando not only trying to survive, but to keep Baby Yoda from eating these eggs. And in this moment, Baby Yoda actually looks like he's starting to learn a little bit something from Mando. He shouldn't be eating these eggs, and it almost looks like he regrets his actions. Until suddenly, he grabs an egg and just starts to eat it. Baby Yoda don't care, you little shit. One of the biggest surprises that came at the end of the last episode of The Mandalorian, and I'm going to go ahead and just put up a spoiler warning just in case you haven't watched that episode, is that we got the return of none other than Boba Fett. Yes, he is indeed alive. Disney has made this official. They have confirmed this is Boba Fett. And everybody's been asking, is this all we're going to see of Boba Fett? Is he actually going to be an active part of this story? Is he going to be following Mandalorian? Is he going to be connected to him or events that are going on with Baby Yoda? What is the deal with his character? And he was completely absent from this one unless they were hiding him in the background. That's really the only thing that I can say about it. There really wasn't much that he could have done in this episode anyway. This was just another one of those really fun sort of adventure-style episodes of The Mandalorian. But the fact that it's actually going to turn into a two-parter is really awesome. So, again, as for Boba Fett, I don't know if he's actually going to return or not, or if they just wanted to confirm, yeah, he's alive. We might do something with him later. I refuse to believe, however, that this is the end that we have seen of this character. I mean, if there's one character that fans want and want development for, it's Boba Fett. I mean, it's cliche to say he's awesome, but the fact that he's not really done that much in the movies, and now he has an opportunity to show himself and do things and actually have dialogue is a pretty awesome prospect. So I really hope we get to see more of Boba Fett. I think it goes without saying that I really liked this episode of Mandalorian. I have really no complaints about it. I just thought it was really charming, action-packed, super thrilling, had funny moments, and some of the coolest Mando moments from the entire series. So yeah, I love this one. Not to mention the whole subplot of Baby Yoda trying to eat those eggs. There was just so many components to this one that really made it feel jam-packed and really fun, despite the fact that the story itself was incredibly simple. But yeah, I love this one a lot. 5 out of 5 for me, but your thoughts may differ, so why don't you tell me why in the comments section below, and of course tell me what you hope to see from the rest of the latest season of The Mandalorian. Do you think Boba Fett is going to return? How is this Frog Lady mission going to turn out? Is it going to be a two-parter? Could it turn into a three-parter? Could this be the plot of the entire freaking season? Just Mando, Frog Lady, and Baby Yoda? And, of course, just tell me what you thought about the episode in general and the future of Mandalorian. So thank you guys so much for watching this review. Please make sure to subscribe to the channel for more videos just like this one. If you liked this one, take off your jetpack, remotely control it, and make it crash directly into that like button. I would really appreciate it. I would also like to take this time to thank my patrons. You guys are amazing. Thank you for making donations every single month. Remember, first-time donators, I will review an anime series of your choice. So thank you guys so much for watching this review. I'll see you all next time, and as always, may the Force be with you.